You may have already given away part of today without noticing. Maybe you were in the middle of something that mattered and a message came in. You told yourself you would answer quickly. 5 minutes became 15, or perhaps nothing interrupted you at all. You simply found yourself thinking again about a problem you cannot solve today. Someone else's decision, something that was said, something that might happen. And then there are the things we agree to almost automatically, not because we truly want to do them, not even because they are especially important. We just do not want to disappoint someone. The interesting thing is that none of this necessarily feels like wasting time. That is why I want you to look at it differently. When most of us think about wasted time, we imagine doing nothing. We think of laziness, procrastination, hours disappearing in front of a screen. But some of the largest claims on our time do not look wasteful at all. They look responsible. They look helpful. Sometimes they even look loving. And if you are over 50, I do not want you to hear that as a warning that time is running out. I want you to hear it as an invitation to use what experience has taught you. You have lived long enough to know that a year rarely disappears all at once. It goes quietly. An hour here, an evening there, a commitment you no longer question, a worry you have carried so long that it has begun to feel like part of your job, and much of what you have given your time to has mattered. You have worked. You have cared for people. You have kept going when other people depended on you. I am not asking you to regret any of that. I am asking you to examine what is still receiving your time now. Because there comes a point when the most useful question is no longer, how much time do I have? It becomes, what deserves the time I have? And the first place I want you to look is very ordinary. It is the moment someone else's request enters your day and, without any real decision on your part, becomes more important than what you had already decided mattered. Think about how easily this happens. You finally sit down to do something you have been meaning to do. Maybe it is a walk. Maybe it is reading. Maybe you are having a real conversation with your husband or wife. Maybe, for once, you simply have half an hour that belongs to you. Then the phone rings. A message arrives. Someone needs something. And almost without thinking, you respond. You tell yourself, this will only take a minute. But the minute rarely arrives alone. Now, I am not suggesting that you become unavailable to the people you love. There are moments when another person's need should absolutely become your priority. The problem begins when every request is treated as though it deserves that status. Because there is a difference between being caring and being constantly accessible. If you have spent much of your life being dependable, you may not even notice the difference anymore. People call because you answer. They ask because you usually say yes. And after enough years, being interrupted can begin to feel less like a choice and more like a role. That is where I want you to become more deliberate. When something enters your day urgently, do not ask only, can I handle this? Ask, does this need to replace what I had already decided was important? Those are very different questions. Urgency has a way of making itself sound important. It knocks loudly. Important things often do not. Your health may not call you. Your marriage may not send a notification. The book you have wanted to read will not become offended if you ignore it again. The meaningful work you keep postponing may wait quietly for years. And that is precisely why these things require protection. You do not need to become harder. You need to become more intentional. Because sometimes another person never takes your time from you. You hand it over before they have even asked whether they truly need it. And other people's requests are only the beginning. There is another way to lose an entire evening without anyone interrupting you at all. You can sit in a quiet room and still give your time away. You may be thinking about a decision your son or daughter is making, something happening in the world, a conversation that bothered you, a problem that is real but not yours to solve tonight. You go over it once, then again. You imagine what might happen, what someone should do, what you would say if they asked, what you wish they understood. And suddenly an hour is gone. Nothing outside you has changed, but something inside you has been working very hard. This is why I want you to see that attention is also a form of time. You do not have to leave your home to leave the present moment. You can be sitting beside someone you love while mentally living inside a situation you cannot influence. Now, caring is not the problem. There are people and circumstances we should care deeply about. But concern becomes costly when it keeps asking for your attention without giving you any meaningful action in return. So when you notice yourself circling the same problem again, ask, what can I actually influence here? Perhaps you can make a phone call. Perhaps you can listen. Perhaps you can offer help. Perhaps you can change your own response. And perhaps, for now, there is nothing useful left to do. That last possibility is difficult for many of us. We confuse continued thinking with continued responsibility, but they are not the same. The calendar may say, you spent 2 hours at home tonight. Your attention may tell a very different story. And worry is not always the hardest thing to stop giving time to. Sometimes the stronger pull is guilt, the fear that if you stop doing what you have always done, someone you care about may be disappointed. Sometimes the pressure on your time does not come from urgency or worry. It comes from a sentence you have been carrying for years. But this is what I am supposed to do. Maybe you are the one who always organizes the family gathering, the one who makes the calls, the one who fixes the problem before anyone else has to deal with it, the one everybody turns to because historically you have always been the person who says yes. And perhaps that role once made perfect sense. Your children were younger. Your parents needed more help. Your work required something different from you. Your family depended on you in ways they may not depend on you now. But roles have a strange way of surviving long after circumstances change. You keep doing something because you have always done it. And after enough years, habit begins to sound like duty. I want you to be careful here, because I am not suggesting that responsibility should disappear simply because it becomes inconvenient. There are things we owe to people we love. There are promises worth keeping. There are sacrifices that give life meaning. But guilt and responsibility are not the same thing. Responsibility asks, what is the right thing to do? Guilt often asks, what will they think of me if I stop? That difference matters. You may discover that some of the things consuming your time are not really obligations anymore. They are old roles that nobody has examined. Perhaps your adult child still brings every small problem to you because you have always solved it. Perhaps your family assumes you will take care of something because you always have. And perhaps they are not deliberately taking advantage of you at all. Maybe the pattern simply never changed. Sometimes people continue depending on us because we have never allowed the relationship to grow into something different. So before you say yes automatically, ask yourself, am I doing this because it is still right for me to do, or because I am afraid of disappointing someone. That question may be uncomfortable, but discomfort is not always evidence that you are doing something wrong. Sometimes it is simply what change feels like when an old role begins to loosen. And some of the roles controlling your present no longer come from anyone asking anything of you. Sometimes they come from a part of your life that is already over. Some of the things that take your time never appear on your calendar. They happen quietly. You are lying in bed and suddenly remember a conversation from years ago. Something you said. Something someone said to you. A decision you wish you had made differently. And before you know it, you are back inside that moment. You explain yourself again. Imagine a better answer. You wonder what might have happened if you had chosen differently. 10 minutes pass, then 20. Nothing in the past has changed, but 20 minutes of the present are gone. I think this is one of the most difficult forms of time to recognize, because from the outside you appear to be doing nothing at all. Yet inwardly, you are working very hard to renegotiate something that has already happened. Now, I would never tell you simply to forget the past. Some things deserve grief. Some things require an apology. Some consequences must be accepted. And there are lessons we should carry for the rest of our lives. But learning from something is very different from repeatedly putting yourself on trial for it. There comes a point when you have understood the lesson, made whatever repair is still possible, and the only thing left is the question of whether you will continue paying for the same moment with more of your present life. That is where the past can become very expensive. You cannot go back and become the person you wish you had been in that moment, but you can decide who you will be in the next one. That is the part still inside your influence. And perhaps this is the distinction worth holding on to. The past may deserve a voice. It does not deserve the final vote. Because once you stop spending so much of today arguing with yesterday, another question becomes much easier to see. How much of your present life are you still spending trying to change what someone else thinks of you? There is a great deal of time hidden inside the need to explain yourself. You replay an old disagreement and think of what you should have said. You imagine finally making someone understand why you made the choices you made. You want them to see that you were a good parent, that you worked hard, that you meant well, that you were not the person they decided you were. And perhaps some of that is understandable. We all want to be known fairly. But there is a point where trying to change another person's judgment becomes a very expensive use of your life, because you cannot live well and control the verdict at the same time. You can clarify. You can apologize when an apology is needed. You can change your behavior. You can become more trustworthy, more patient, more honest. Those things are inside your responsibility, but you cannot climb inside another person's mind and arrange the conclusion. And the longer you try, the more easily your attention shifts from character to reputation. You begin asking, how do I make them see me differently? When the more useful question may be, am I living in a way I can respect? Those are not the same question. One puts your peace in somebody else's hands. The other brings you back to principle. This does not mean becoming cold or pretending that people's opinions do not matter. Sometimes they matter very much, especially when we have hurt someone. But after you have listened, repaired what you can, and examined your own conduct honestly, there comes a point when continuing to defend yourself no longer improves the relationship. It simply consumes you. And you may spend years trying to win a case that the other person stopped reconsidering long ago. At some point, living according to your values must become more important than winning permission from someone else to feel good about your life. Because there comes a time when defending your life begins taking time away from actually living it. And even when no one is judging you, there is another habit that can quietly take just as much from you. The habit of never leaving a moment unfilled. There is something else I want you to notice. How quickly do you reach for something the moment life becomes quiet? A television goes on. The phone comes out. You check the news again, even though you checked it 20 minutes ago. You open an email that does not need an answer tonight. You find one more small thing to do, not because any of it is especially important, simply because an empty moment has appeared. Now, I am not against entertainment. I am not against rest. And I am certainly not suggesting that every free hour should become productive. That would miss the point entirely. Real rest has value. A good film can bring joy. A conversation can restore you. Music can change the atmosphere of an evening. Sometimes doing very little is exactly what you need. The question is whether you chose it, because there is a difference between resting and simply keeping yourself occupied. And after many years of being busy, quiet can feel surprisingly uncomfortable. You have spent decades answering questions, solving problems, getting somewhere, taking care of something. Then eventually a little space opens up. And in that space, questions you have postponed can begin to surface. What do I actually want now? What have I been saying is important, but never making room for? What have I outgrown? What am I still doing simply because I have never stopped long enough to reconsider it? Those questions can be uncomfortable. So it is very easy to fill the silence before they have a chance to speak. That is why I would not ask only, how much time am I spending on my phone, television, or news? I would ask something more revealing, what am I using these things to avoid noticing? And then, after an hour has passed, ask, did this hour restore me? Did it connect me to someone? Did I learn something, enjoy something, or become more present? If the answer is yes, that hour may have been very well spent. But if the only answer is, it kept me occupied, then it deserves a second look, because the final thing I want you to examine is even harder to recognize. It does not look like distraction. It can look like discipline. And this final one may be the hardest to notice, because it does not look like wasted time at all. You can be organized, reliable, disciplined. You can finish what you start, keep every appointment, handle every responsibility, and still spend years doing things that no longer deserve the place they once had in your life. That is a difficult possibility to admit, because some priorities are not wrong. They are simply old. Maybe there was a time when a certain professional goal mattered deeply to you. Maybe you once cared very much about maintaining a particular standard in your home, belonging to a certain group, keeping a tradition going, or being known for something. And perhaps all of that made sense then. But life changes. You change. The people around you change. Yet, we often continue investing time simply because we have already invested so much of it. We become very efficient at continuing. And efficiency can become dangerous when we stop asking where it is taking us. So I want you to consider a question that may be uncomfortable. If the next 10 years looked very much like the last 12 months, would you be satisfied with what received most of your attention? Not with everything that happened to you. I mean the part you were able to choose. Would the things you say matter most actually be visible in the way you spent your days. Because it is possible to become extremely good at something that no longer matters enough. You can climb very quickly and still discover that the direction itself needed reconsidering. This is why beginning with the end in mind is not something you do once when you are young. You have to return to it again and again, especially when a chapter changes. What mattered at 30 may not deserve the same place at 55. What demanded everything from you at 40 may need far less from you at 60. That does not make your earlier choices foolish. It simply means life has moved, and wisdom requires you to notice. So after looking at these 7 things, I do not want you asking only, what should I stop doing? There is a better question. What deserves the time I get back? Because the goal was never to empty your life. It was to make room for what still matters. Now, after everything we have examined, I want to make one thing very clear. The goal is not to create an empty life. It is not to become less generous, less involved, or less available to the people you love. And it is certainly not to turn your calendar into a scorecard where every minute has to prove its usefulness. That would simply become another form of pressure. The real question is what deserves a place in your life now? Because saying no only matters when it protects a more important yes. Maybe the time you recover belongs to your health. Maybe it belongs to the person you have lived beside for 30 years, but have not really sat with lately. Maybe it belongs to an adult child who no longer needs your solutions but would still value your attention. Maybe it belongs to grandchildren, friendship, meaningful work, service, prayer, reading, walking, creating something, or simply being quiet long enough to hear your own thoughts again. Only you can decide what those first things are. But they rarely force their way into your day. That is the difficulty. The things that matter most are often remarkably patient. They wait. And because they wait, we assume we can return to them later. Later can become a very long habit. So I do not want you merely removing things from your life. I want you making room deliberately for something you would regret continuing to postpone, for someone who should not always receive what is left of you, for a part of yourself that has been waiting quietly while everything louder went first. An empty calendar is not the goal. A life in which what matters most is finally visible in the way you spend your time. That is much closer to the goal. And there is a very simple way to see whether that is actually happening, not in theory, in one ordinary week of your life. So here is what I want you to do, not next month, not when life becomes quieter. Tonight, take one ordinary sheet of paper and write one question at the top. What received my time this week? Do not begin with what you intended to do. Do not begin with what you say matters most. Look at what actually received your hours. Then divide what you see into 3 simple categories. The first is keep. These are the things that genuinely matter and deserve the time they are receiving. The second is reduce. These may have value, but they are taking more from you than they should. And the third is release. These are the things that keep receiving your time, mainly because of habit, guilt, fear, distraction, an old identity, or an obligation you have never reconsidered. Now, do not try to change everything. That is how good intentions become another form of pressure. Choose one thing, just one. Find 30 minutes, perhaps an hour, that you can recover from it during the next 7 days. And then do something very important. Decide in advance where that time will go. Give it to your health. Give it to someone you love. Give it to work that still matters to you. Give it to reading, reflection, service, rest, or something you have been saying is important for far too long without giving it a place in your calendar. Because if you only remove something, the empty space will not stay empty for long. Something urgent will find it. Someone will ask for it. Habit will reclaim it. So do not merely free the time but stamp it. That is where priority becomes real, not when you say, this matters to me, but when something that matters finally receives a place that something less important used to occupy. You do not need a new life by next week. You need one visible decision that proves you are no longer giving every part of your time away automatically. You may have already given away part of today without realizing it, but that does not mean you have to give away the next hour the same way. I want you to remember that. This is not an argument against the life you have lived. You have worked. You have carried responsibilities. You have been there for people. You have made sacrifices that mattered, and probably some that nobody ever fully saw. And like every one of us, you have also worried about things that never happened, tried to satisfy people who could not be satisfied, stayed loyal to roles you had already outgrown, and spent time on things that once mattered more than they do today. That is not a reason for regret. It is a reason to become more deliberate, because one of the gifts of having lived more than 50 years is that you now have evidence. You know that some problems eventually solve themselves. You know that some opinions you once feared become irrelevant. You know that achievement can feel smaller than expected, while an ordinary afternoon with someone you love can become a memory you would give almost anything to have again. You know more now about what lasts. So let that knowledge enter your calendar. Let it shape what you answer, what you worry about, what you continue, what you release, and what you finally make room for. You cannot recover yesterday's hours, but you can decide with greater wisdom than before what deserves the next one.